Stan, your favorite Polish Taiwan YouTuber. Hope you're all having a great day. Welcome to today's show. The CCP created a system of collective crime in China. Let's talk about the recent Tangshan beating. Recently, there was an event that enraged people, which can be called the result of such a criminal societal system that the CCP is building. On June 10th, a CCTV footage of an assault and a group beating that happened in a northeastern Chinese city of Tangshan was posted on the internet. We can see how this male approached a woman who was sitting at another table and without getting any permission placed his hand on the back of her. On that footage, we can see how the woman was trying to push him away, but the man refused to back off and reached out again for her face. Then he slapped her and pushed her to the ground. Friends of the victim sitting at the same table tried to help her and push back against the attacker together. The perpetrator first knocked the victim's friend to the ground, and then the other men who came to the restaurant together with him not only did not stop the attacker, but instead picked up a chair and hit the woman who was on the ground with it. And afterwards, the group of attackers started punching and kicking the first victim. Her friend that tried to help her was also beaten until she fell on the stairs. Even when she fell down, the attackers continued the beating. In the end, the victim was seriously injured and sent to the hospital, and none of the witnesses in the restaurant stepped forward to stop the beating. At first, the perpetrators were actually acting very arrogantly, as they allegedly had very good relationships with the Public Security Bureau of Tangshan. They thought they could use the money and their connections to avoid any legal consequences. But when the video was published on the internet, it caused an outrage from the public in China. Even more, the other victims of this group of bullies also came forward with accusations of various criminal acts committed by them in the past, also highlighting that the Tangshan Public Security Bureau has been helping with covering those criminals. A lot of illegal activities came to the surface. So, why did this violent incident resonate with the people on the internet so well? And why was the response so swift? Just like when the video of an 8 children's mother from Xuzhou has been published. Just take a look at this case. Women are experiencing public violence or sexual harassment and cannot get any legal protection. It became a new norm in China, and in many cases the perpetrators have very good relationships with local officials, or even with the officials from the central government. As a result, justice is unreachable in such a society. As I said in my last video on the mother of 8 from Xuzhou, CCP-ruled China is not a rule of law country, but rather a rule of man. Societies like that usually have a lot of problems with corruption and mutual aid and illegal activities between the government and criminals. And we're not only talking about organized crime here, but criminal activities becoming a way of life for corrupt officials. Criminals occupying governmental positions are sometimes controlled by the privileged class or by the local criminal forces in each province, and the illegal income they create is used for further bribing. This is the true example of a communist state. It's a fertile soil for the local bullies to thrive, and all of these criminals around China are interconnected with the state apparatus very well. The situation with women's rights is at its lowest in China, and the reason for that is in the political system that the CCP created. A rule of man kind of state never cares about the legal norms. The people in power are above the law in such a society. And when women's rights are being violated, when women lose their autonomy, it is hard to hold the abusers liable through legal means. The CCP created an unmerciful society that stands on the pillars of relationships or connections and corruption. Women's rights are often being sacrificed in China, and sometimes women become objects for bribery for the ruling class, or even a status-showing accessory for the top officials and business elites. Talk about objectification. This system is created to oppress women's autonomy, reproductive rights, and constantly belittle women. A system like that will never allow any meaningful women's rights advocacy. Moreover, the CCP government will never be held responsible for that. They will only pretend as if it's not their business, and will just cut the parties involved in public scandals off. But if the scandal is related to the top-level CCP officials, it's a whole different story. Do you remember the Peng Shuai case? Once the information about Zhang Gaoli harassing her was shared on the internet, the CCP used their state apparatus to suppress her voice and control public opinion in China. Of course, this time the CCP also tried its best to make the public think that it's not a women's rights related issue. The CCP's position is that this assault is an independent incident involving local gangsters. Why does the CCP want to switch everyone's attention from women's rights issues? That's because they think that the women's rights movement is used by the foreign forces to incite an insurrection or subvert the CCP's government. But we all know that starting with the CCP's one-child policy and up until today's three-child policy, all of these policies of the Chinese Communist government have a goal of suppression. The CCP has been suppressing women's rights for decades. And what's important, the demand for women's rights occurred in China naturally. It's not a foreign-brought thing. But the CCP doesn't care. They prefer blaming the foreign countries for all of their problems. Being a ruling part of such a big country, don't you think that this kind of behavior is too irresponsible and even childish? And the most ridiculous thing here is that Xi Jinping's spouse, Peng Liyuan, is still acting as a special envoy of UNESCO for the promotion of girls' and women's education. She was appointed as a special envoy in 2014, but she did nothing for the women of China. Starting with Peng Shuai's case, or the case of the mother of 8, or the recent beating in Tangshan, we didn't hear Peng Liyuan standing up for the Chinese women a single time. Of course, she also never asked her husband to pay attention to these cases. The CCP has also never stopped intervening with women's reproductive rights. The only thing they did is switching from one-child policy to a three-child policies, meaning it is still not up to you how many babies you can have. Let's also not forget that Peng Liyuan sang to the martial law troops following the 1989 bloody massacre on Tiananmen Square. How can this person have anything to do with human rights? In February this year, human rights activists from many countries jointly signed an open letter demanding Peng Liyuan's status as a special envoy to be revoked. I hope that this request won't be just forgotten with time. We should keep on demanding for Peng Liyuan to have her special envoy status revoked. It is also necessary for the further promotion of women's rights in China. Having Peng Liyuan at this position is just sarcastic. Another thing I like to discuss with everyone today is why weren't there any people willing to stand up for these women at the restaurant? Why didn't anyone try to stop the violence, but the people were just standing by? There have been a few witnesses of the violence, but nobody stood up against it. Hui Shuzheng, a lawyer at the Jingling law firm in Zhejiang, China, published an article called "What Would Have Happened If the Bystanders Came Forward to Stop the Beating in Tangshan" on the WeChat public account Ice Review. According to this article, if the bystanders came forward, they could have been injured, and medical expenses wouldn't have been paid for them. Or the perpetrator could have gotten injured and sue a person who stood up for the women. This person could have faced real criminal charges for that. Therefore, Hui Shuzheng, the lawyer, he believes that you shouldn't encourage ordinary people to make unnecessary sacrifices. There also is another thing that we have to pay attention to. In China, you should pay before any medical services are provided to you. And it's also very hard to get any money from the insurance company. In addition, those criminals from Tangshan have very complicated relationships with the police, as I said earlier. So the innocent victims had to suffer from all of that violence and didn't get any help. And things like that, they're just the tip of an iceberg in the CCP-ruled China. Incidents like that happen every day. To conclude it all, the root of the problem lies in the CCP-created system. It's a society where laws cannot be truly implemented, and when the fourth power, the media and the internet, is also controlled by the government, the anger of the general public can be ignited at any time, because of any case like that. For this kind of institutional crime, no matter how the CCP government is trying to conceal it, any case like what happened in Tangshan or Xuzhou may one day become the last straw to overthrow the tyranny. Thank you for watching. If you liked the video, please press like, subscribe and share. This is Tan. I see you in the next one. Bye bye!